right there.
Praza, you said you'd let me handle this. Wait, Shepard?
I'm not taking any chances with Cerberus operatives.
Put those weapons down!
You know me the best, you know my words, see me hurt, but you don't.
Remember when I gave you that Geth data
that
cell?
right there is
Did it help you complete the pilgrimage?
feeling.
Those Geth control nodes. The information you uploaded to
Opening
Alliance
and
Control.
closing up
I want
again,
copies.
I've been
Go
hurt
ahead.
so I
Take
don't
your time.
trust. Now here we are staring
My
at the
people,
ceiling.
I've
said those
great
words
debt.
before,
One I can
but
never
it
repay.
was a lie.
The only thing I can offer in return is
Deserve
what
to
you already
hear
have.
it in
My
1,000
solemn promise
times.
to stay with
If
you
all
until
it is
the
to say
end.
that,
Just
why is
don't
it so
worry, it's
hard
nothing
to
serious.
say?
God's love.
If all it is to say that, why am I
In my own life.
own way?
We are in our suits.
Why do I pull you close and then ask you for space? If all it is to say that is, why is it so hard to say?
How much space? Walls are stone. It's amazing. I wish my friends could see it.
Isn't it amazing? How almost every line on our hands align. When your hands are mine, it's like I'm whole again. Isn't that a sign? I should speak my mind. I've said those words before, but it was a lie.
You have a planet to go back to.
Deserve to
My home
hear
is 1,000 away from extinction.
time.
You've got a place
If all
here.
it is to say
Don't
that,
throw it away.
why is
Don't
it so
need.
hard to
Don't
say?
need.
If all it is
I
to
don't
say
wear a
that,
helmet in
why
my
am
own
I?
home. I die.
own
A
way?
single kiss could put me in the
Why
hospital.
do I pull you close and then ask you for space?
Who just sit down
All it
and
is to
do
say
an expression
that
to
is,
have
why
to
is it so hard to say?
feel it.
When I close my eyes, it's you there in my mind. When I close my eyes, if all it is eight letters, why is it so hard to say? If all it is eight letters, why am I in my own way? Why do I pull you close and then ask you for space? If all it is eight letters, why is it so hard to say? If all it is eight letters, when I close my eyes, it's you there, it's only you. When I close my eyes, if all it is eight letters, when I close my eyes, it's you there, in my mind. When I close my eyes, if all it is eight letters.
Tolly sat in the dark escape pod, illuminated only by a dim red light. The adrenaline from her escape from the Normandy was beginning to wear off. Her mind began to wander. Tolly sat in the dark escape pod, illuminated only by a dim red light. The adrenaline from her escape from the Normandy was beginning to wear off. Her mind began to wander. I wonder how many others made it out, she thought. She was in a pod with Chief Adams and a few other engineers. Just like Commander Shepard assumed, Adams had performed remarkably given the circumstances. He and the crew tried their best to keep the Normandy running as long as possible, but immediately obeyed the evacuation order when it came. Nobody said a word in the pod, everyone trying to process what had just happened. The Normandy, their home away from home, had just been destroyed. Nervousness set in, and Tolly began wringing her hands. Her mind raced through all the possible outcomes of their situation. What if the Alliance can't find us? How long can we survive out here? Did Shepard make it out? Her mind lingered on the commander. She hoped everyone had made it out of the wreckage, but she hoped he made it out alive the most. He had always treated her with respect, which was abnormal behavior towards Quarians. Most people were wary of Quarians, and they had a reputation for thievery. Shepard was different though. If he had ever been wary of Tolly, he didn't show it through his actions. That kind of attitude toward her had immediately gained Shepard her respect. Not only did he respect Tali, but he allowed to serve aboard the Normandy. Allowing a Quarian to serve aboard a non-Quarian ship was almost unheard of. Tali had been in awe of the ship's drive core, and cherished the opportunity to work on it. As if that wasn't enough, Shepard also allowed her to have a copy of classified data on Geth evolution to use as a pilgrimage gift. Tali couldn't think of a more valuable gift, and he gave it to her without any reservations. Shepard and Tali had become friends almost immediately. He would come down to the drive core to talk with her often. The commander would make sure the rest of the crew was treating her right, ask her about Quarian life and culture, and also seemed genuinely interested in hearing about her. Talking about herself always made Tali nervous, especially around non-Quarians. Something about Shepard calmed her nerves, however, and she always felt more comfortable when she was around him. She had accompanied him on countless missions because of her tech expertise, and saw how Shepard wholeheartedly cared about the safety and well-being of those under his command. Sometime during her time aboard the Normandy, Tali had developed a deep romantic interest in Shepard. She had been rescued from an ambush on the Citadel wards by a dashing and heroic commander, who invited her to join him on his quest to save the galaxy. How could Tali not develop feelings for him? She never told him, though. Every time she thought of bringing it up during conversation, her anxiety would run wild. Tali convinced herself that Shepard only saw her as a valued crew member and close friend, nothing more. Her feelings for him never lessened, though. If Shepard hadn't survived the Normandy's destruction, she would never be able to tell him how she really felt and see if he felt the same way. Tali's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Joker's voice on the pod's short-range transmitter. "This is Joker," the familiar voice said. "How many other pods escaped?" Liara checked in, and reported who was in her pod. Lieutenant Caden Alenko did the same with his pod, as did Adams and the rest. An eerie silence fell over all the pods. One name in particular was missing from everyone's count. Finally breaking the silence, Caden's voice came over the transmitter. "Joker, is Commander Shepard with you?" Joker hesitated for a moment, struggling to find his voice. "Commander Shepard," he could barely get the words out. "Shepard didn't make it. He died. Making sure I..." Joker couldn't finish. A wave of guilt and grief crashed over the normally wisecracking pilot. He broke down and started sobbing. All the survivors were in shock. Nobody said anything. There were no words to describe what they were all feeling. Some crew members started crying, others just sat there, unable to process what they had just heard. Commander Shepard was gone. The only man that could have possibly filled the hole left by Captain David Anderson's departure. The man who they had all come to know and deeply respect. The savior of the Citadel, who defeated Sovereign, Saren, and the Geth. To those survivors, Shepard wasn't just their commander, he was their friend. He wasn't supposed to go out like this. Shepard deserved better. Instead, he was killed by an unknown ship during a meaningless mission. However, they knew Shepard died fulfilling his duty. He gave his life to make sure Joker was able to keep his. Shepard died the same way he lived, caring about the safety and well-being of his crew. In the engineering crew's pod, everyone was taking the news hard. Adams buried his face in his hands, distraught at what he just heard. The other engineers were feeling the same grief. However, it was Tali who was taking it the hardest. She was hit by a painful mixture of sadness and anger. She muted her helmet's voice output so the others wouldn't be aware of how much of a mess she was. Tali's body language, however, made it obvious how she was reacting. Her whole chest sagged with each sob that escaped her body. Her shining eyes, normally visible through her visor, were absent, as tears streamed from her closed eyelids. Tali cried because Shepard was taken away from her and the crew by an unknown enemy while on a useless mission. She lost the only man she had ever developed any kind of romantic feelings for. She was angry with herself that Shepard had died unaware of the feelings she had for him, because she was too scared to tell him. Now Tali would never get that chance. And she had to live with it. Tali was hard at work down in the drive core, focused on the console in front of her. She was monitoring the Normandy systems, when all of a sudden she felt a pair of hands gently grab her hips. Utterly surprised, Tali whirled around to see who the hands belonged to. She was ready to punch whoever it was, until she saw that it was Commander Shepard who was behind her. He had a warm smile on his face, and his eyes staring into hers melted her heart. "Shepard," she exclaimed, her fist relaxing. "Keela, what are you doing?" Of course Tali wanted him to hold her, but she just couldn't believe what was happening. The anger she had originally felt was replaced by nervousness. Tali began wringing her hands, and she looked towards the ground, both her telltale signs of nerves. With one hand, Shepard gently grabbed her hands and held them, a non-verbal way of telling her she didn't need to be nervous with him. He placed his other hand under Tali's chin and raised her head up until her eyes met his. "Tali, I've noticed the way you act differently around me compared to the rest of the crew," Shepard said fondly. Was I really that obvious? She thought. Tali's cheeks were on fire as she blushed from Shepard's revelation, and she was glad he couldn't see them through her visor. Shepard took her hands in his, using his thumbs to rub them affectionately. He continued, the passion evident in his voice, "I want you to know I feel the same way." Tears of joy began to well in Tali's eyes as Shepard moved his hand up to remove her visor, her smile beaming. She finally was able to see his face unobstructed, and didn't care about the health risks of her face being exposed. Tali finally took the initiative, closed her eyes, and pulled Shepard in for a passionate kiss. When she pulled away and opened her eyes, she was horrified at what she saw. Shepard was still standing there smiling, but parts of him began to slowly blow away as if he was made of dust. Tali gasped and took a step back. A few moments later, he was gone entirely, and she was alone. Tali shot up in her bed, a cold sweat covering her body. It took her a moment to realize that she wasn't in the Normandy's drive core room, but instead was in her cot aboard the Nema. Tears slowly began to stream down her face as she slowly laid herself back down. Tali muted her voice output so the other Quarians sleeping around her wouldn't be able to hear her, as she gently wept into her pillow. She leaned over to the edge of her cot, and reached under to grab her footlocker of personal effects. It was only a small footlocker. Living in the migrant fleet meant that Quarians couldn't afford to have many material possessions. Tali's footlocker contained something very sentimental to her, however, the datapad that used to contain the Geth data that Shepard had given to her. She had used it as a pilgrimage gift, and it had turned out to be of tremendous value to the migrant fleet. In fact, it was arguably the most impressive pilgrimage gift in recent memory, and Tali had been able to have it because of Shepard's generosity. It was the only physical object she had to remind her of him, and she kept it as a memento. She tightly held it close to her chest as she continued to cry. "Keela, I miss him so much," she thought. It had been almost 2 years since Shepard died. After the crew had been rescued by the Alliance, they were all invited to attend Commander Shepard's funeral and memorial service. Captain Anderson, Shepard's mentor and commanding officer, led the service. Everyone Tali had come to know during the course of their mission to stop Saren was in attendance. Gurus, Liera, Caden, Joker, and even Rex were all there, but their presence did little to comfort her. There wasn't a dry eye in the building, and all the feelings Tali had initially felt when she heard Shepard had died came rushing back. The crew couldn't even say goodbye to Shepard in person. The Alliance had never managed to recover his body. Tali returned to the migrant fleet after Shepard's funeral and decided to join the crew of the Nema, earning the title Talizora Vas Nema. She used her engineering skills and tech expertise in addition to her pilgrimage gift to gain the respect of most of those in the fleet. Being the daughter of Admiral Railzora, she had a lot to live up to. By utilizing the engineering knowledge she gained from working on the Normandy's Advanced Drive Corps and the combat prowess she had learned from going on missions with Shepard, Tali had done an impressive job so far of living up to her father's fame. Since she was arguably the leading expert on the Geth, she had been given her own research team to conduct missions given by the Admiralty Board. Despite acclimating well to life in the migrant fleet again and being grateful for the opportunities given to her, Tali missed serving aboard the Normandy. She missed working on the most advanced drive corps in the Alliance fleet, especially since most drive corps in the migrant fleet were old and less challenging to maintain. She missed working with a human engineering crew, learning new techniques and procedures. Above all, Tali missed Shepard. In the past 2 years, she had barely managed to get over Shepard's death. Tali never managed to let go of the feelings she had for him, though. She never found the same connection with any other Quarian man her age that she had found with Shepard. Tali often found herself wondering what she could have had with Shepard if he felt the same way about her. She doubted he would want a Quarian woman, whose face he could never see, whose skin he could never touch, who could never give him children. Shepard would probably have wanted a human or a Sari woman anyway, her self-doubt told her. But now Tali would never know the answer, and that uncertainty was difficult to live with. Every once in a while she would dream of Shepard, and the same feelings she felt in that escape pod after hearing he died would come flooding back. Tali had managed to cry herself back to sleep, and awoke the next morning still clutching the datapad. She quickly hid it back in her footlocker, not wanting anyone else to know about it. "Come on Tali, get yourself together," she thought. Tali tried to put the emotional previous night behind her. She had an important mission on the human colony of Freedom's Progress that day. It had recently become deserted, and her team was to recover a Quarian pilgrim named Viternara and search the colony for any information regarding the disappearance of the humans. Tali needed a clear mind in order to stay focused today. There were too many unknowns on this mission for her mind to be elsewhere. However, no amount of mental preparation could have prepared her for what she would find on Freedom's Progress.